Hi there, I'm your host McAuley Tucker, and you're listening to The McAuley Tucker Show, the podcast where I sit down with some of the most accomplished and fascinating individuals in the entertainment and business industry. From celebrities to industry leaders, our guests offer unique perspectives and inspiring stories that will educate and inform you. Join me as I sit down with my next guest to cover their humble beginnings, challenges they faced, as well as their accomplishments in life. You are bound to learn something new, so sit back and enjoy the interview. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to another episode of the McAuley Tucker Show. Today, we've got a very special guest, Bob Bergen. Bob Bergen is the voice of Porky Pig from the Looney Tunes, and he's been involved in the voice acting industry for many, many, many years, from doing commercials to Hollywood movies to be doing voices even on television. So today in this episode, we're breaking down his life, just the accomplishments he's had, and most importantly, the lessons he's learned and the challenges he's faced. And I really think you'll enjoy this interview a lot, so sit back and enjoy the show. I know people have said in the times past, I know one individual said that you would make an excellent lawyer, but for you, why voice acting? What was it about the ability to shape and manipulate one's voice? Such a cool thing. Why did this interest you in particular?
Well, I will tell you that originally I didn't know it was voice acting that I was interested in. What I was interested in was cartoons. Right. And I was just entertained by them. But I also, by watching them, I found I had this ability to do them. I was a big fan of the old black and white Fleischer Popeye cartoons. I was a big fan, and it was the comedy. Right. It was the comedy of these cartoons, Looney Tunes, obviously. And my mother used to tell a story when I was really young. Saturday morning, she'd be in the kitchen doing dishes, and she would hear in the living room the cartoons. And she would hear a line from a cartoon, and she'd hear the line again, which she thought was odd. And she kept hearing that over and over again. She stood behind me, and she saw me mimicking the cartoon back to the TV. Wow. And I didn't even know I was doing that. I was just doing that. And that was my first, I guess, voiceover class, if you want to think about it that way. And I didn't know there was a business called voiceover. I didn't know I didn't know this was acting. Yeah. I was just enamored by cartoon characters. So I took them with me to school. I took them with me to Cub Scouts. Any chance I could, and in particular, Porky Pig. That was my favorite. And any chance I could, I would just do that character for fun. So That's literally what got me into it. I didn't find out it was a business until much later.
That's really fascinating. You mentioned, growing up and watching these shows and comedy and, just recreating those voices. Me as growing up as well, I would try to do that when I was a little bit younger. I'd also do the same. And that stood out to me when you were answering that question. It's just really awesome to see that you were able to practice and, perfect the skill. I know growing up, you also were able to perfect the lyrics to the Partridge Family music as well. So it looks as if you were able to practice, and perfect your skills in almost everything at that age. Growing up, we are shaped by our family. And I know you were given your Jewish heritage. Can you kind of discuss how this impacted your work growing up?
I don't know if it impacted my work. It certainly impacted my values. Okay. I wouldn't say that we were the most religious family on the block. We were more traditional. Right. Certainly like an occasion Jew, the high holidays, definitely Passover, Hanukkah, but we also did Christmas because my parents were raised with both. They had a menorah and a Christmas tree because it was fun for kids. Yeah. But I will tell you that my parents were value driven people, and I'm value driven. So. But I will tell you that, when we moved to LA and I was pursuing this business, my mom would have Passovers where my mom's rule was there was Passover or Thanksgiving, whoever is hungry and doesn't have a place is welcome here. Mm-hmm. But our Passovers were Bill Farmer, who was the voice of Goofy, and Billy Hayes, who was on a show that you don't even know called HR Puff and Stuff. She played a witch, and all of my friends who did funny voices. And have you ever done a Passover Seder?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, well, a Passover Seder is basically telling the story of the Exodus. And everybody reads out of the book called the Haggadah, which tells the story of how Moses freed the slaves out of Egypt.
Oh, wow.
But in our house, everybody read in funny voices.
Huh.
So my mother, it was standing room only, and we had a list of people put me on the list. I'd love to come to that. But my mother would not let me ever invite devout Jews because she was afraid they'd be insulted.
Yeah.
But, it was fun. We had a good time.
You were talking about values, and that's one that just kind of sparked a question. I'd love to ask this: what are some of your values? What are the values that are really near and dear to your heart? I'd love to hear about that because you seem to be very interested in values, and I too. Values are very important, and people should bear values more. And I want to hear this. What values are close to your heart?
Such a great question. Man, there's so many. I don't know where to start, but let's start with hard work. Let's start with victims never prosper. Wake up every day looking to be a victim, and you will never be happy. Happiness is a choice. It is sometimes you're having the most miserable day of your life, but you go outside with a smile on your face because you owe that to people. Everybody has had lousy things happen in their life. Right. I was born with part of my leg missing. And I had a sister who was injured in a car accident and left brain damage at 3. And I had a mother who was dealing with both of these things. Mm-hmm. And obviously, understandably, depressed.
Right.
And then she realized, I can't be depressed. I've got to be happy. I've got to be there for my kids. And she told me the story. She forced herself to go out every day, get dressed, look pretty, be presentable, look like she's enjoying life. And even if she doesn't feel like it, put a fake smile on your face. And she said she realized one day, oh my gosh, that was a real smile. I wasn't faking it. My parents taught me that. By the way, I walk. They were told I may not. I did. All my parents did when I was very, 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 very young was hold up a cookie, and I came running for it. They were like, if this doesn't make them walk, nothing will. Mm-hmm. But they taught me to look. You're not special because of your bad foot. You're not somebody to pity because of your bad foot. We went to the public pools, and my parents said, look, kids are going to stare. That's normal. They're going to ask questions. They might even giggle. That's normal. They may be embarrassed. That's normal too. How you react to that is in your power. Right. So they taught me empathy by knowing how not to treat people by the way I was treated. We're living in a society today that puts so much emphasis on words that kids don't know the value of sticks and stones, that you have the ability to ignore the idiots. Mm-hmm. The values that they taught me with sticks and stones, which everybody used to live by until the internet, it gave me a thick skin to be an actor.
Right.
Because look, odds of booking are very slim no matter where you are in your career. I audition for a busy day. I might read for 10, 15 things. I don't expect to book any of them.
Yeah.
If I do, that's icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. All I want to do is have fun in my audition. But that thick skin is something that everybody, whether you want to be an entertainer or if you want to be a school teacher or an attorney or a doctor or a great parent, you got to have a thick skin. Otherwise, every little thing's going to bug you and you're just going to wake up every day being a victim, which goes back to the value of don't be a victim. So you and I could talk about just the values that I took from my parents for about 4 or 5 hours.
That's crazy.
Which, boy, I got to tell you, I wish more people in the world lived their life with values rather than feelings, because doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. But looking back, you're going to go, oh, you know why that does feel good? Because I did the right thing. But in the process of doing it, might be painful. Might be, it's like, you know what it is? It's like, calling somebody when they lose a loved one. Mm-hmm. It may feel awkward. It may not be comfortable to do. But it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
If a friend of yours books the voiceover job, it was between you and your friend, you call and congratulate them. And you're happy for them. Be happy for your competition. I'm thrilled when I have a student that books. It means I did my job right. It doesn't happen often
Right.
because, I've been teaching for 30 something years. Not everybody is going to pursue at the professional level, but the handful that have, man, when I'm sitting next to them at a job, boy, is that cool. But some people might be envious. Some
Right.
people might be jealous. Some people might be angry. Well, boy, what a miserable person you will be. So my parents instilled that kind of character value in me.
Right. You said a lot of very important things there, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I feel like our listeners will really appreciate hearing this, and it definitely must have been challenging growing up in that situation. But it's very good that you were able to pull through, be able to apply these values to your life. And same here. I believe people should have values more, and exactly they should have thick skin. And it's, we live in a world exactly like you said, where people just, everything kind of, victims and things like that. But growing up, it's very important to have parents that care for you. And it's really great to hear that you were in that same situation. And I was going to ask you, you're mentioning the way you were raised, doing voices. Was this kind of a thing that helped you get your mind away from all the stuff that was happening around you?
No, I wish I had a better answer than that. It didn't. Um, it was just a part of me.
Right.
Now, I was a bit of a class clown. I was not an evil child. I was a mischievous child. So, when a teacher would ask me a question in like kindergarten, first grade, if you have two apples and I give you two more apples, how many apples do you have? And I would always just throw out Porky Pig. Let me get this straight. If I had two apples and you gave me two more, I'd have four. I'd have four. I'd have this many. So, and for people who are not watching this, I held up 4 fingers, and I'd go to the principal's office, and the principal, throughout my school, my time in school, each principal at each school would say, let me hear what you did, and I would do it. And they'd laugh and they'd catch themselves laughing and they say, look, you can't do that. Or I would mimic a teacher back to a teacher.
Oh, my word.
I know. I would do that like in junior high. And I'd go to the principal and I would mimic the teacher to the principal. The teacher would laugh. I would get detention if I did a lousy impression. I had one principal. If I did a lousy impression, he'd go, "Nah, I got to give you at least a day's detention." That was really bad. But okay, well, I'll work on it. And that's what I did in detention. You're sitting there doing nothing. You're supposed to be doing your homework. I'm thinking, how did I, Mr. Rothbard? I thought I did him really well, but I guess I didn't. So yeah, I made it work for me.
That's really great to hear that's actually really funny. I wasn't expecting anything like that. My last guest was talking about the same thing, kind of at school. He would do sound effects. And would people ever ask you to like do voices? I assume the students knew about this, so they'd probably often ask you, hey, can you do this voice? Can you do that voice? That must have been a great experience at school. Must have also been kind of annoying at times if people were always pestering you about this. Growing up, you moved to, I believe, Los Angeles, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
You moved to Los Angeles at 14, was it?
Well, I didn't personally go. My dad took a job here.
Okay.
So, when you're 14 and you were 14 not too long ago, and usually when your parents say, listen, we have to move, and you're in like, junior high, the last thing you want to do is leave. You've got friends, you've got a social life. My dad's informing me and my sister that we're moving to LA, which is where cartoons are made.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Dad, don't tease me. Really? We're moving to LA? And my dad was commuting back and forth. I think he told us we're moving like in March, but we didn't actually move until the summer because my parents didn't want me to leave in the middle of a school year. So he would go back and forth. But when he would come to LA, I would say, do me a favor. And this is a horrible thing to ask, but he did it. I said, just go to a phone booth and go to the Yellow Pages. And for people who don't know, the Yellow Pages were a business resource. The White Pages were residential. How you got phone numbers? I said, Dad, rip out A for animation or C for cartoons and just bring me the phone numbers of these studios. So when I get to LA, I've got some research. And he did. And I had, H for Hanna-Barbera, W for Warner Brothers, D for Disney. I had the main phone numbers, and I was delighted that he did that. And I feel bad for anybody who's going to those phone booths looking up D and like, where's D? Who would rip this out? My dad did.
Yeah, I was reading about that in your bio. You like you called people like all the time when you were younger. And I was looking back and I was thinking I've been doing that a lot recently in the sense that for interviews, it's just awkward at times too, calling managers and publicists and just on the phone and saying, "Hey, it's me. I'm calling from Canada." And it's just like, wow, this is so different. But you were really wanting to work in this field. And now look.
Well, we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
We didn't have email. I mean, today, very few people are not on social media. Or so in my business, you want to pop a message to Rob Paulson or Candy Milo or Jeff Bergman, Maurice LaMarche. Not only can you, but they'll probably respond because they're also really nice people. And, the collective us that do cartoons, I used to do on-camera acting, theatrical acting. I stopped because it got in the way of my voiceover career. But man, a very different community of actors, not nearly as generous or genuine, more jealous and kind of bitter. But man, when before the pandemic, when we would record together, ensemble, it was a mutual admiration society. It was the world's greatest voiceover class because I'd sit there and listen to D. Bradley Baker or Candy or Debbie Derryberry, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm taking notes because that was good," And in between takes, you look at each other and go, "That was great, holy cow!" But that's the nature of the voiceover industry. Going back to what you said,
right?
We're all reachable, but back then it was the telephone. That's the only way to reach people. So I've told the story a million times. So I called Mel Blanc, and I called Dawes Butler, and I called Casey Kasem. I did, and because I figured, look, if you want to be a brain surgeon, call the top brain surgeon at Cedars-Sinai or UCLA. If you want to be anything, you want to be a top chef back then, find Julia Child's phone number and give her a buzz. The worst thing that happens is they don't take your call or they hang up on you, but they probably won't, especially if you're a nice teenager.
Yes.
Who's respectful, because people are excited by ambitious, nice, and driven youth. It is it's like a magnet, like you. We were talking before we started recording. I was just drawn to your enthusiasm and your gift of gab and your ambition.
Thank you.
With this gift of gab, that is, people are drawn to passionate people.
Yes, exactly. And you just got to establish that. And it's definitely difficult. Like when I was younger, when that mentioned before we, did the interview, just emailing people. At first, they don't know, oh, this they think it's a grown adult. And they realize, oh, it's a teenager. That instantly kind of switches the whole mood. And they're like, well, nah, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. And they don't really treat you normally. And it's definitely difficult. But you mentioned, there was no internet, so you were just calling on the phones. And I know in your bio you talked about how Mel Blanc and this all just kind of worked out for you. Fast forward, I wanted to kind of briefly talk about before you started pursuing voice acting professionally. You had a few different things that happened. Not in this particular order, but you were a tour guide at Universal, and that I thought that stood out to me. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. I'd love to talk about that briefly before we go into a lot of the voice acting related questions. Working, as a tour guide at Universal, you also were working on Jeopardy. And that was also a pretty cool thing that stood out to me, aside from the voice work, and even hosting the Hollywood Christmas Parade. And that was pretty cool too. Those are all really awesome things. I wanted to hear about kind of the lessons that you learned in kind of all these three different things. Was there any really valuable lessons that you took away from these experiences? They're all very different. There's very different things that come with these experiences, but what did you take away?
Well, let's start with the tour guide. Before I was a tour guide for one summer, I was a puppeteer at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Right.
And I was some of the most delightful people I've ever worked with. It was a hard job because, you know, you're in costumes and walking around in the heat, but it's improvisation with puppets. I was in a tent with a screen in front of my face, and the puppet would be in front of the tent. So I was literally chatting with guests as different puppets. It was so much fun, great training. But a bunch of us would sit in our break room and talk about, man, wouldn't it be cool to be a tour guide at Universal?
Right.
And a couple of us applied to be a tour guide. You know, you go through testing and then training, and then in my training class, I think there were 36 people in the training class. I think 16 of us got to the point to test, because they would get rid of you as you went along if they didn't think you could cut it. And I think only about maybe 4 or 5 of us passed.
Oh, wow.
And what did being a tour guide teach me? Is that what you're asked about?
Yeah,
The values,
like the lessons that you learned from this whole experience.
That everything you do has opportunity beyond the day-to-day of what you're hired to do or what you're there to do. For instance, I had access to 420 acres of a movie studio. Most people wanted their days off to be on the weekend, just to have the weekend free. I wanted 2 days off during the week, because on my days off, I would go back to Universal, and they allowed guides to do this back then. I don't know if they still do, but as long as you wore your tour guide uniform, I could go on the back lot and just wander and watch TV shows and movies being filmed. I could go in the sound stages and watch interiors being shot. And I struck up conversations with Anthony Perkins when he was directing Psycho 3. And I would find the mixers doing ADR, which is automated dialogue replacement. It's adding voice back to film. And they would let me sit back and watch actors have to sync themselves, or group actors doing group background voices, way before I ever did that professionally. I learned how to hit your mark. I learned what a best boy and a gaffer was. I learned set design. I saw really horrible behavior and really wonderful behavior. I saw the biggest of the biggest celebrities and stars being, I remember watching Dom DeLuise being directed by Burt Reynolds for a show called Amazing Stories that Steven Spielberg produced.
Right.
And I watched how nice they were to everybody, to the costume people, the makeup people, the craft service people, where they would get a donut first thing in the morning. And then I saw the actors that nobody knows being total jerks. And it taught me behavior. It taught me the industry. I saw, oh, you're never late, and you stay late. If you're a half hour early, you're a half hour late because you should have been there an hour ago. I watched actors have trouble getting it right, and a great director putting their arm around them and say, okay, good. I like that. This time, try it that way. The first thing they did was to boost their ego, and then they adjusted them so the actor felt safe to be adjusted. I would have never learned any of this had I not been a tour guide at Universal Studios.
That's beautiful. And that career, that just sounds like an awesome, just like that job sounds really awesome. That'd be one that, I mean, I would be definitely interested in doing, because if you're one who wants to go into the film industry, why not get a behind the scenes look at that by being a tour guide in that kind of area? That's awesome. And even Jeopardy too, that sounds like an awesome experience too, being on camera. You mentioned earlier that you stopped doing plays and kind of theatrical stuff to do voice work, but being able to kind of be on camera and have a show, I guess, be a host of a show. That's just such a cool experience to have. And it's really awesome to hear all these values. And after this, you then began to pursue, I believe, voice work professionally. And you got the role of Porky Pig, and that's awesome.
The difficult part back then was that everything had to be in person.
Right.
We have home studios now. Auditions are from home. Work is from home. I never did cartoons from home until COVID, but we used to go to our agent's office to audition. I had to make up excuses to leave Universal,
right,
to go to auditions and to work. I mean, when I was doing on camera, and this came from being a tour guide, I would just go knocking on the casting director's doors during lunch can I read for something today? Can I? And I remember this one casting director said, if I let you read, will you stop bugging me? I said, sure. And he gave me a script to read, and he goes, well, darn, that was good. And he passed me on to the producers, and I got that was, I think, the first on-camera job was an episode of The Facts of Life. But I called in sick for 5 days to do it, and my trailer was along the path of where the trams went. And if I heard a tram come by, I had to hide in my trailer because I couldn't let them know I was working because I told them I was sick.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't actually. Most actors, most tour guides who were actors didn't book the job, so they'd let you go to auditions. But then if you book the job, you're like, well, you can't take 5 days off. That took 5 days to do a sitcom.
Right.
So I got that from being a tour guide. The Jep thing, Jep was the name of the show that I did, which was a kid's version of Jeopardy. That was a fluke.
Oh,
I mean, I'm a one hit. It wasn't even a hit. It only lasted one season, but I'm a one game show host wonder. I got that because I did a movie called Space Jam back in the 90s. And I was in New York doing a talk show to promote the movie. And I got a call from an agent who represents hosts. And she said, look, our client was the host of that show, and you held your own, and you did a great job. Have you ever thought of hosting? And I said, no, not really, but thank you for asking. And I told my voiceover agent this. And my voiceover agent said, don't be an idiot. If they know your face, I can get you more for your voice. So I called the hosting agent back, and I said, okay, look, this was during the days of Jerry Springer and people throwing chairs and angry talk shows, and not something I was interested in participating in. I thought that was trash TV, entertaining, but garbage. And I told the agents, look, I won't do this. I won't do this. I won't do this. But if you still want me, let's figure this out. And the first audition they sent me on was this kid's version of Jeopardy. Same producers as the primetime Jeopardy. I think it was just called Junior Jeopardy at the time. Eventually it was called Jep.
Right.
And McAuley, I didn't care. I didn't want it. So I went to the audition thinking, well, this is a joke, but my agent sent me. And I'd watched Jeopardy. I'd never memorized it. I wasn't that kind of a fan. So I went to the first audition and just kind of went through the motions and had a good time. And then they gave me a call back, and then another call back. And then it was between me and two other guys, and they wanted to screen test me.
Right.
And the screen test was to run an episode of Jeopardy on the stage, on the Jeopardy stage at Sony.
Ooh.
And I'm like, okay. So the three kids that they brought in to run through this, it wasn't a real show, it was just a run through. They were children of Sony executives.
Okay.
And I walked up to the kids at the podiums, and people think the Jeopardy show. I walked up from the podium to where their podiums. I said, kids, make me look good. I'll buy you each a car. and they said, okay. And I didn't even know what the categories were going to be until I got there. It was a very, very cold run through. But one of the categories was famous cartoon characters.
Ooh.
And the clue would be, he lives in Jellystone Park with Boo Boo, and he's smarter than the average bear. Who is Yogi Bear? Correct. His girlfriend is Olive Oil, and he likes spinach. Who is Popeye? Okay. Well, one of the writers comes up to me after that run through and says, forget this. Have you ever thought about voiceover? And I said, that's my day job. They had no idea because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. They didn't know my voiceover career. My hosting agent didn't promote my voiceover career. They just sent me to read for this thing because I looked the part.
Wow.
I got the job. I bought each of the kids a Matchbox car. I didn't tell them what kind of car I was going to buy them. Okay. I bought them, excuse me 1 second. I bought them a Matchbox car. And I will tell you that it was the most rewarding and difficult job I've ever done, because you do 5 shows a day. And I was my own announcer. I remember looking they have a primping mirror backstage before you walk out. And I remember looking at myself going, why are you doing this to yourself? If you notice, I don't shave that often because I'm a voice guy. I had to shave. I had to wear makeup. I had to go clothes shopping. I had to wear a wardrobe. I had to memorize stuff. Why am I doing this? And it was the most difficult, rewarding thing I ever did in my career. At the time, I was the voice of Disney
Right.
Channel. And, that was a big time, full-time job because I was there 5 to 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. As the promo guy for Disney Channel, I was working while we were shooting Jep. We shot on weekends for, I think, 3 months. I was working 7 days a week.
Wow.
For 3 months. But I was young. When you're young, it doesn't phase you. But it also was at the very beginning in the host world where they stopped hiring hosts or MCs and they started hiring actors.
Yes.
Actors who are well known to host things. So I found I wasn't able to book more because they didn't want a host.
Right.
They wanted a well-known celebrity. One of the last auditions I ever did, I went in to test for The Mole, and I think it was on ABC. I think Anderson Cooper ended up booking it. But I'm sitting in the lobby at the Sunset Gower Studios, across from this young, attractive, skinny dude, and The Mole is a rugged, outdoorsy sort of competition thing, and I'm a wimp. I'm not outdoorsy at all. And I'm sitting across from this guy who's looks much more athletic than me. And I looked at him and I said, dude, I have to tell you, this job is yours because this is not me. And he goes, oh, it's not me either. I said, I just came off of hosting a kids game show. He goes, me too. I said, okay, well, listen, good luck. And I walked in to audition for this, and the producer says to me, by the way, you're not going to book this, but we wanted to hear Porky Pig audition for The Mole. I said, are you serious? And they were like, yeah. I said, okay. Hey, by the way, I figure, well, I'm not right for this, but I'm going to have fun with these people. And they had a sense of humor. Maybe I'll get something else from it. So I auditioned. I walked back out to the lobby. I said, dude, first of all, you got a better shot than I. And I told him what went down. I said, by the way, I'm Bob Bergen. He goes, really nice to meet you. I'm Ryan Seacrest. And I said, break a leg, Ryan. And I said, he goes, what game show are you doing? I said, it's called Jep. It's a kid's version of Jeopardy. He goes, I'm doing one called Click. It's created and produced by Merv Griffin, who created and produced Jeopardy at the time. Not at that time, years ago. So Ryan did okay for himself in the world of hosting. Just saying.
Yeah, that's crazy. I never knew how this was involved in your whole story, and you kept doing voice acting through all of this. You kept working it through, and you've done lots of projects. You've done lots and lots of projects. And I wanted to ask this question because I know you've talked about Porky Pig so much. And I wanted to ask you, besides Porky Pig, what project in particular, no matter how small the role was, is one of your favorites, like that you had a great time working on? Because you've done so many. It could be commercials, movies, TV shows, and you talk about Porky Pig all the time, and it's an amazing role. But out of all the stuff besides that, is there one that stands out to you the most?
I wouldn't say one, but certainly when I was the voice of Disney Channel, that was a blast. Because you're the promo voice, but you have to establish a brand for the network, which is a group effort because you've got network executives and producers who are directing you. It's hard work. Because I remember when I first got that job, a bumper is a lead in and lead out. So just before a commercial, don't go away. Goof Troop will be right back right here on Disney. We now return to Goof Troop right here on Disney. Don't go away. The Mickey Mouse Club will be right back. So my first day, I had to do like hundreds of those.
Wow.
Because they had to slowly integrate me into the network. Well, after 300, don't go away. Goof Troop will be right back. We now return to Goof Troop. And they're like, no. You, as far as the audience is concerned, they've never heard you say this. You've got to be peppy. Oh, okay. So that was a valuable lesson and a good lesson and a fun lesson. And you don't get screen credit when you're a promo voice. So nobody knows you're doing it, but it was a lot of fun. Animation wise, man, I remember back in the 80s, I did the animated version of Fraggle Rock.
Yes.
For productions. And that was just because you're working on a Jim Henson product. I was working with writers and producers, Cynthia Friedlob and John Semper, who to this day are some of my favorite people on the planet, favorite people to work with, and the most incredibly talented people I've ever worked with. And a cast: Rob Paulson, Townsend Coleman, Mona Marshall, Pat Penny, Barbara Goodson, John Stevenson, who was Mr. Slade on the Flintstones. I mean, it was just so amazing. Also only lasted one season, but it was just a pure delight to work on that. I did a movie called The Emperor's New Groove, where I played a squirrel. I just played a little squirrel, and he didn't speak English. He spoke squirrel. And from a creative standpoint, that was just amazing. Tiny little part. I was hired for one day. That when they tested the movie, they wrote more stuff because he got a good response from the test audience, and I ended up doing 3 or 4 days. And then I did a straight-to-video sequel, and then I did 3 years on a series from that one little tiny part. So, oh my gosh, I don't know if you can see it, but that's a character, No Face, from Spirited Away. Again, I didn't audition for it. It was just go to Disney. They're doing a movie called Spirited Away. It's an anime. It's being dubbed. It is produced by Pixar, and they want you. Okay, it was because the movie itself is just so creative. And I didn't understand it. I remember taking my manager at the time to the audience, or the cast and crew screening, and was over. She goes, "What was that about?" I said, "I have no idea. Not a clue." But the fans seemed to like it. Man, I mean, I could go on and on and on about commercials that I did that were just, you know, I can remember the very first Air Jordan spot that we did that eventually became Space Jam, where it was the Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan. You know, they were called Hair Jordan. And it was a Super Bowl spot. So let's start with that. Wow, we're doing a Super Bowl spot. And it just snowballed into a movie, a franchise. We did 2 or 3, I think, of commercials like that. And man, I got to tell you something, McAuley. I've had more fun just auditioning on jobs I never booked than I have on a lot of jobs I've booked.
Oh, wow.
Because it's me in that booth over there, and nobody's there to tell me what I can't do. So I am at my creative best. And I always tell my students, you got to get a high at the mic.
Yes.
You've got to, you can't audition to book it. You've got to just enjoy that creative high.
Exactly.
But you should enjoy that creative high if you're an interviewer. Enjoy that creative high if you're a painter. Enjoy that creative high if you're a school teacher. You've got to get a high at your job. And my job is to audition.
Yes.
If I book it, it's a rare, lovely circumstance.
Exactly.
So I have just as much fun, creative fulfillment in an audition as I do on a job.
It's very important to have, you know, making every situation all like, you know, enjoyable and fun and never being bored. And that's what I really enjoy in my life. Just even the hardest and difficult situations, just having fun and having a ball. So for voices, I wanted to ask this: the voice acting industry is constantly evolving. Can you discuss how you've adapted to these changes over your career, specifically in the relation to the range of animated projects you've worked on, including both classic and modern characters? Because it's always changing. Has it been difficult for you to adapt to these changes?
Not for me, because if you don't adapt, you don't stay relevant. A perfect example of that is when silent movies became sound. And a lot of silent actors did not have great voices. And they found that their careers floundered. A lot of silent actors had lousy voices, but they went to dialect coaches and speech specialists to adjust their voice for sound. When I first got in the business, I did my first job in 1982. I had my first agent in 1982. That was when they started when agents started having studios in their office and bringing in their clients to audition in their office studio. A lot of veteran actors didn't like that, because what you and I are doing right now, this eye contact, this connection, is important. Yes. You know, you hear actors talking about, I'm great in the room. What is the room? It's the audition room. It's the casting director. It's the producer. It's the network. It's the people. And I'm great in the room. But I got into this business as they were phasing out being in the room. And I knew some veteran actors who either refused to go to their agent's office and just kind of retired, or begrudgingly did it.
Right.
And they brought in attitude. And they're, a good agent is gonna, like Sharon Moonstruck with a, slap in the face and say, snap out of it. This is how it's done today. I never had a problem reading in my agent's office. And then demos were on reel to reel when I first got in the business. They went from reel to reel to cassette. A lot of actors hated to have to they might have just invested $5,000 in a handful of reel to reel demos. Now they have to do the same thing with cassette. And then they went to CD.
Exactly.
So this is the evolution of the voiceover industry. Right. When I first got in the business, there weren't a lot of cartoons being done. There were Saturday morning cartoons on 3 networks, the occasional syndicated cartoon. Disney might have done an animated feature once every 5 to 7 years, not much. And I was told by everybody, it's impossible to break in because they've got Mel Blanc, they've got June Foray, they've got Frank Welker, they've got Michael Bell. They don't need you. And I said, well, time will tell. I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. And if it doesn't work out in my favor, I'll do something else. Right. Cut to today. We have 24/7 animation cartoon networks. We have games. We have streaming animation. We have primetime animation. Every major motion picture studio has a thriving animation department. Today, there is more content out there than there ever has been in the history of the entertainment industry. Exactly. So there are more opportunities today than ever. There's also more competition, but that's okay. Yeah. COVID hits. I have a wonderful soundproof booth that I've auditioned in. I've done a few jobs in my booth. We never did cartoons from home. Right. We would have to go to the studio. Within 10 days and about a $2,000 investment, I had a broadcast quality home studio, and I was ready to go in less than 2 weeks because I knew if I want to stay relevant, I've got to do this. And I felt nothing but gratitude that with this little investment, for some people that's not a little investment, but relative to investing in a career from the beginning, $2,000, 2 jobs pays for that. Two episodes of a cartoon pays for my investment. And I was already working on stuff. I had to be relevant. Right. We couldn't go into the studio. And voiceover was the only acting genre that kept going when COVID hit. Because theater shut down, movies and TV on camera shut down, voiceover thrived.
Exactly.
And I was grateful to so again, from day one, reel to reel demos to cassette to working from home because of a pandemic. Who knew? Right. And this is the new normal. I don't see us ever going back to the studio mainstream.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I never have to go back into a studio again, I'd be thrilled.
Really?
I can work more because I don't have to drive the freeway. Right. I don't know if you know about LA freeways, but half of my day was spent going from one place to the other. Where at home, my agent can book more jobs during the day because I don't have to drive anywhere. Right. I can actually look. I've got an hour and a half between now and my next job. I can fold laundry. I can market my career because I'm home at my computer. I love it. And I'm still connected to people because we're directed on Zoom.
Exactly.
I've got some shows where they've got the full cast on Zoom and we're still reacting with each other. But I would say 99% of it, we're doing our line solo with the director. What I miss, though, is the lobby. I miss the lobby more than the ensemble work. Because even before COVID, we were doing a lot of our stuff solo because we're all so busy. We can't get the whole cast together. I miss the lobby where I could hug. How's your family? How are your kids? Oh my gosh, wasn't your kid applying to Harvard? What happened? Sitting in a lobby at a place called Salami Studios and just striking up a conversation with Mark Hamill. Right. I mean, that's kind of cool. So, or my friend Lorraine Newman. And we talk to each other on social media, but it's not the same. That's what I really miss more than anything is that kind of connection or, seeing the director and giving them a hug. Because they're all really cool, nice people and friends of mine. But man, I do love working from home.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. And it's really great to hear that you were able to, readjust to all these really major changes. And I know talking with other people, they've enjoyed, being in the same room talking with the voice actor, but you're still able to do that too with Zoom. And it's really great to hear that you're able to do this and you're able to still be successful in voice work. Kind of almost wrapping up. One question that I had was the Emmys. I was really curious about this, and I wanted to hear about this because I don't have any knowledge on how this kind of works. But from my understanding, governor's appointee. I'm not sure if that's what you do now. I think you maybe have another role there. But what is your role at the Emmys? Kind of like for our listeners' sake. And I don't know what that entails.
Well, first of all, I've been a member of the Television Academy since the mid
All right.
90s. Um, I served on the board of governors for 10 years. I'm not anymore. I was termed out last
Okay.
year. And if I wanted, the way it works is if you've served two-year consecutive terms, if you want to run again, you got to be sit out a year before you run again. I don't think I'm going to run again because 10 years is plenty. And I think it's important for new blood, for new ideas, for the next generation to come in. But the Board of Governors, we do everything from oversee and regulate the Emmy competition. Sometimes that means, hey, this award has been around for a long time. Is it still needed?
Right.
Or the industry has changed so much that we don't need this award anymore. Or, hey, we need a new award because of things like streaming or genres of television programming. For instance, for the longest time, game shows were daytime programming. Today, they're primetime.
Right.
So during my last year at the TV Academy, the Board of Governors recognized that game shows deserve their own category, host, and recognition in the competition. So it is a lot more than that, but I don't want to bore people. I'm a big fan of TV.
Right.
I love television and being involved in recognizing and honoring excellence, preserving the history of, and being conscientious about the future of is what being on the Board of Governors is all about.
Hearing your story, it's so interesting, all the twists and turns and all the awesome things you experienced from being a universal tour guide to even being involved at the Emmys. And it's always interesting sitting down with my guests and just hearing their story and our listeners, the impact. It's awesome. With voice acting, what's kind of one lesson you learned through voice acting? That kind of ties with the question I always ask my guests towards the end, is kind of like, what is one piece of advice that you want to give to any number of the listeners listening? Typically, I mean, a lot of younger people listen, but there's a lot of older people as well. But like, what's kind of one piece of advice you can give to our listeners that you've learned through voice acting?
One is a hard number because there's so many, but it's called voice acting for a reason. It's not just doing voices. People are like, hey, everyone tells me I've got a great voice. I really doubt that you're talking about agents, casting directors, producers who've told you have a good voice, because they would never do that. It's usually the bank teller or the checker at the grocery store or your mom or your friends. But this is voice acting. The most important piece of advice I can give anybody that wants to do what I do is study acting, study improv, then study voiceover. And every genre of voiceover requires its own training, demo, and marketing.
Yes.
Again, I did not have the internet when I was starting out, even studying. I got to a point where I was studying and getting ready to possibly make a demo, but I didn't know what a demo sounded like. So I would call talent agents, voiceover agents, and pretend to be a producer and say, hey, I'm producing something. Can you send me your client's demos? And back then they had a thing called house reel. It was a giant reel to reel with a 1-minute snippet of their top talent. And they would send it to me, and I would, oh, that's what a demo sounds like.
Right.
That's what a great demo sounds like. I've got to be better than that. Oh my goodness. So today everything's online.
Right.
Today you can listen to Atlas Talent, CESD, DPN, Vox, SBV, Dean Panero. You can listen to the top talent agents, actors, demos, and go, I got to be better than that. Because if I'm not better than that, I'm going to send them my demo, and they ain't going to want me because they don't need me.
Right.
So it's the A word, acting, and also you got to be brilliant.
Yes, exactly.
You've got to be brilliant, and you have to want this more than anybody else, and be willing to do more than anybody else, because they don't need you. They've got all the voices they will ever need. What they need is a brilliant you.